for 88, you suckers.
At the Grand Concourse 149th Street station in the Bronx, graffiti writers gather at what they call the writer's bench.
What's good, what's good, what's good? Live from the Writer's Bench. I'm your man, Kill, with the usual suspects on tap. We got my man, JP, Beezo. What's going on, y'all?
What up?
What up, what up?
Yo, one of the things that I kind of noticed from doing our sophomore slump show, it seemed to be something that me and Ev always talk about these years in 1997 and 1998, like on some old Twilight Zone of hip-hop, because it's like so much seemed to happen in those years. And when I was looking at editing the show about the sophomore slumps, the bulk of those albums all came post 96. You know, when we look at groups like PE, BDP, Kane, Rakim, EPMD, Stet, Tribe, Daylight, Common, Fugees, none of these people had this sophomore slump because all their sophomore albums and even some of their third albums were done pre-1996. So it's something about that 96, 97, 98 years that something happened up in there. And my man, Dewan, always broke down hip-hop. He looks at hip-hop as, you know, while Big was alive and then after Big. He's like, there was a shift in hip-hop after Big died. And I have a personal album that I look at kind of like the same thing, which is actually Jay-Z's Hard Knock Life. I kind of feel like that album made a split in hip-hop. It was one of the first times that, for the bulk of times while we was at Morgan and through the 90s, it was like, if you was a hip-hop head, you kind of all agreed on everything. But it was like that album was like the album that kind of like split hip-hop right down the middle. So just wanted to chop it up to see what you guys thought about, like what happened in those years, or even if y'all agree with that. Y'all may not even agree with that. So the first thing that I'm looking at was like, all right, well, boom. If you look at it from that big category, you got Ready to Die dropped 94, September 13th. You got Big getting killed March 9th, 1997. And then you got Life After Death dropped on March 25th, 1997. 97 was the year of some of the albums that we talked about. We talked about Mike Geronimo's Vendetta, which was just straight trash. You know, he just jumped right on that, making moves with Puff, no Master IC, none of that stuff. It was like straight with that. You got Jay-Z's In My Lifetime, which was one of my picks, which was Jay doing Half Street, making joints with Babyface and Foxy Brown and Blackstreet. You had one of the album I'm gonna bring up that I think really paved the way for something. You had Puff's No Way Out album. Now the crazy thing about that album was I never knew this. I knew it sold a lot of records. That joint sold 7 million records, man. Mm-hmm. Like 7 million. Yeah. So we gonna touch on that. But yo, do you think?
Okay, I'm sorry. I have one question. Was that No Way Out? Was that all about the Benjamins?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So keeping in mind the bulk of that was, I know I brought the album just off the strength that there was still big verses on there when he was alive. So I mean, that's why I brought the album. I didn't buy it for the Missing You joint. I'll Always Love You, Big Papa. It was that I knew his joints like Victory on there, All About the Benjamins, that there was still like, you know, pieces of Big left, you know, on there. So I mean, that's why I purchased it. And to be honest with you, I think that's why a lot of people purchased it. But the first thing I wanted to ask Cats was, when you look at what Big said on Kicking the Door, you know, niggas took home Ready to Die, listen, study shit. You know, we know that line was directed towards Nas, and I'm sure subliminally other people too. But, and me and Ev always talk about this, but do you all blame Puff for the downfall or that split in hip-hop? Because like Puff had the recipe of, we're going to do Juicy, and we're going to do Kicking the Door, and then we're going to do, you know, it was the joint One More Chance, and then we're gonna do we always gonna hit you with a radio joint and a street joint. And it seemed like people tried to follow that recipe. So do you all think that's one of the reasons the split in hip hop came, or do y'all blame Puff, or where do you think it came from? So we'll start with you, Beezo.
I think I don't want to put it all on Puff. I do think a bulk of it does go back to Puff. I mean, if you remember, we talked about this on the show. We talked about what happened to hip hop after Big and Tupac died, and that kind of like lost his way. And I do think Puff had a dramatic effect or impact in terms of the East Coast. And I think there was other business going on the West Coast with Snoop and all them, and Dre and his stuff with Suge or whatever, that I think helped kind of put a real big like mark in the game, and it changed, I think, the way a lot of cats did business. But I think Puff deserves a lot of the credit or blame, whatever side of the fence you lay on. But I mean, because he was the one that started it. I've said this before, like the first time I noticed the change was when Big did a joint with the Brat. And that's back when the Brat was like, she was in the same mold as like Criss Cross. That kind of like, I don't want to call him a gimmick, but they wasn't, for like real hardcore hip hop heads, the Brat, Criss Cross, they were kind of like, yeah, whatever. They was kind of some fun stuff. You wouldn't be going out and buying their albums. That was for the mother crowd or whatever. And I think Puffy started that with the glitter suits and the suit and tie shit and all that. And when Big passed, Puff being Puff, the businessman, kind of looked at it like, what's the exit strategy here? What's the best way for me to continue making money now that my breadwinner's gone? You know what I'm saying? So I think he decided, he looked at what worked with Big and what he was already starting, with Big, with that kind of hip hop type of sound. And he just took it and ran with it. And, let's not forget that I think we were all in Baltimore at the time, but I'm sure we would all, especially John, I'm sure you would know that, like, at that time, Puff just ran New York radio. You know what I'm saying? He had it in a stranglehold. You know what I'm saying? So pretty much wherever Puff took it is where it was going to go. You know what I'm saying? He was that dude in New York well before Jay became Jay-Z that we know him now. It was all about Puffy, at least in the Tri-State area. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure it was like that for most of the East Coast. So, yeah, I think Puff deserves a bulk of the blame. I wouldn't put it all on him.
All right. What you think, Ev?
I agree. I don't know whether at this point to say is blame or credit. It's like Beezo said, it's whatever, whatever fits your palate. But I think Puff is definitely the person behind, the man behind the man for that split in hip hop. Puff basically played Barry Gordy. He did a Barry Gordy in the mid '90s, and he basically brought a whole lot of money into, and it's very similar to the way Barry did it too, but he brought a lot of money into what we know as hip hop. Before that, it was really like, in my mind, from what I remember, you could, as far as commercial and underground, it wasn't necessarily a definitive line like that until after Puff. Then it was very clear what was commercial, what was the money maker, and then what became like, the underground. And I mean, he did it, he did it in a very interesting way. You put labels on things, and you put titles on things that people don't like Backpacker or Hater. You know what I mean? And just let it move from that point. So I think the way he did it was smart. It was a smart move, for him, for hip hop heads. No, I don't know how much we dug it or we like it, but I definitely think that, yeah, Puff played the majority of the role in that split that happened, and everything else to me was somewhat of a domino effect.
All right, what you say, JP?
I mean, I have to agree with Ev and Beezo. I think Puff, I mean, he was the dude that he contributed to that shift. I feel like it probably would have happened anyway, because the whole dynamic of music shifts every few years anyway. So if it wasn't him, it would have been somebody else, but that's just speculation. But I mean, he was the dude that he saw what worked, what was able to make money, because he's a businessman. This is show business. You know what I'm saying? So he saw what worked and he just continued it, and everybody saw that formula. And because at that time, like Beezo was saying, cats weren't really making that much money before that. But once Puff had that formula and they saw the type of money he was able to generate from that, people followed suit. And that, I mean, I really can't fault him for that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like in order to maintain, for this hip hop thing to pay your bills, you're going to do what you got to do to make this money. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I don't like Ev said, I wouldn't necessarily blame him, but he's definitely an integral part in that shift.
All right. Now tell me this, y'all, because each one of y'all heard say kind of like Puff isn't all the way to blame. So if we give Puff 75% or 70%, where does the other 30% go to? Ev, what you say?
I say Big. I mean, people don't like to say that, but Big. You know, Big is he was a grown man, and he made the decisions to do what he did. Puff couldn't do it without Big. So Big played a very huge role in that. And I think, you know, a lot of times people don't want to look back and see and remember that during that time period, there was a lot of like hip hop heads that was dissing Big. De La Soul, Wu-Tang, Boot Camp Click. A lot of cats was dissing what was happening because he had brought a whole nother element into it. He did it for his own reasons, no doubt. But I think, you know, he definitely, you know, it wasn't like Puff put a gun to his head, like go out there and do this and do that. Like Big, you know, to me, Big was like, okay, yeah, I can go out here and I can make some money off of this too. And I can't, you know, at this point, when I was younger, it made me, you know, I'll be upset about it. But at this point, can you really knock a musician that wants to make money? I mean, the music is a sacrifice for it, which is a shame. But you know, I'm not going to sit here and try to speak for somebody else's pocket. But I think Big played a very big part in that.
All right, JP, what you say? What would you give if it's not all Puff? Where would you give some of the other blame to?
Oh man, it's hard to say. Nobody sticks out in my mind. Like, okay, well, Puff gets this much, and this person gets the. You know, I feel like it would have changed anyway. Somebody would have figured out a way to, you know, cross over, so to speak, in order to get a wider audience and generate more money. So I'm not really sure if I can pinpoint it to a certain person. I feel like it would have happened anyway. Puff just happened to be the person, and whatever else contributed to it. Like, but that's not just one person for me. I can't really pinpoint it.
All right. What about you, Big?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to a little bit what I was saying. I do think there was a shift going on as well on the West Coast, and not even just. And I think at the same time, if my memory serves me correctly, when did Outkast first drop?
94, I think. Right.
So by then they were already an established artist.
93.
Yeah. So the South was starting to come up. You had Common out in the Midwest, and obviously, you know, the Dog Pound and all them cats. But if I'm not mistaken, that was around the time when Dre and Suge started having their problems. I could be wrong, but I think it's around the same time. So I think that also played a part in it because it left a void almost in the West Coast where, again, I wasn't out there to know, you know, what the vibe was, but just going off of, you know, people that I know that was out there, things like that, it seemed like there was kind of a stake put between the West Coast where people were siding with Dre and some people were siding with Suge, and then Snoop, if you remember, was kind of left kind of in limbo at the time. And I think all of that, it was like the perfect storm. You know what I mean? You had Puff doing his thing after Big died, and now you had this stuff going on the West Coast, which by then was established as like, you know, the only real threat to the East Coast, to the New York sound, or whatever you want to call it. And at the same time, you had the South coming up. So I think all of those things contributed. So kind of like JP said, I wouldn't necessarily put like 30% on this one dude and the other 70 on Puff. I say it's all of those things combined. But at the time, I think Puff was the biggest dude in hip hop in terms of like in the game, a hip hop artist, a hip hop entity or whatever, not the labels, you know, the distributors, but as an individual, I think Puff is the one cat we can sit back and say, okay, he definitely forefathered this part of the game, and he was to blame for this, so he gets credit for that. But I don't think you could put it on one more individual. I think it's just a perfect storm of things that were going on at the same time.
Right. Now I feel you, and that's a good point, because when I was looking at 98, you know, you still had dope underground hip hop. I mean, even in 97, you had Common's One Day It'll All Make Sense, KRS's I Got Next, Beatnuts, Stone Crazy, CNN's War Report, you know, OC's Jewels, you know, so you still had that underground, but I think it's like what Ev kind of touched on. It was around that time when the line got drawn in the sand, when there really was no underground, overground, or you're a pop act, or you're this, or you're a backpacker. Like, that's what kind of drew the line. Because even in 98, you had Moment of Truth, Capital Punishment, Aquemini, Black Star, Soul Survivor. You still had dope hip hop, but you still had that Hard Knock Life album. And the reason why I was saying for me that was like the split for me, because that was the first time I could remember Beezo, and I want to say I was at Shit Crib with Roots and Shy, and you, me, and Shy were like, yo, this is whack, and Roots was loving it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what Roots had been back in New York too. He like
Okay.
came down, so it wasn't like he was still in that whole like vibe in Baltimore. He was back and running the streets and trying to do the hip hop. So yeah, Roots, he did kind of segue a little bit into that world, like yeah, but it's winning, so that's dope. And that's I think is one of the problems with hip hop is like people equate just making money and selling records as that's what's dope, like that makes it dope. And I'm like, well, when has that ever been the case in hip hop? Because some of the greatest hip hop artists that was a forefathers to all this, Kane, Rakim, G-Rap, you know, the list, Slick Rick, whatever you want to, them cats didn't go multi-platinum. You know what I mean? Hip hop wasn't that type of entity. So I never, that's why I said it before, I've never put, when I take an opinion on an artist or music or sound in hip hop, record sales mean absolutely positively nothing to me. They are no way, shape, or form anything that I input into the equation because I've seen way too many dope artists. I mean, hell, Mecca and the Soul Brother didn't go gold for dumb long. Even Illmatic, it took like a couple years for Illmatic hit platinum and gold and all that. So, you know, I think the hip hop fan was too. I mean, you know, it's a like sports, Kill. You know how it is. It's a, you know, it's a copycat. People gonna copycat what seems like is being successful, whether they have the elements to duplicate that or not. They want to just copycat that whole shit. And I think that's why it is that fine line that you want to blame Puff or you want to give him credit, because there is some credit that is due to that man for allowing money to come into hip hop, and it goes from being, you know, it's almost like back in the days when the Brooklyn Dodgers was around. The Brooklyn Dodgers worked summer jobs. You know what I mean? Here they were athletes, you know what I'm saying, in the metropolis, and they worked, well, winter jobs because it wasn't making that much money. That's how hip hop was. Cats was doing other things. Cats still have money on the block and shit like that because hip hop wasn't getting paper like that. And Puff opened the floodgates. He brought the paper in tenfold. But that's like the locks.
If I can add on to that, man, it made me think about the fact that the reason why that works so well because Puff had somebody like Big, whereas he still understood what, you know, hip hop heads wanted.
Right.
He knew how to take that and sell that to the masses as well. Which you know, you really got to give credit to that. That's a phenomenal. Not so many people do that.
Right. Yeah, which also, when I think about it, you know, as y'all talking about it, you know, he did, we loved Big first album, and you know, he was a big part of that album, you know, Ready to Die, which is a classic album, and also Mary's first two albums. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Yes, two classic albums, which melded the hip hop, the hard drums with the melodies of R&B, and created this hip hop soul thing that like everybody fell in love with. It was, I mean, we had heard blends and all that, and heard the remix "Come and Talk to Me" by Jodeci, but not an entire album dedicated to that format. You know what I'm saying? That was Puff.
Yo, I'm not laughing at what John's saying. It's just, he just reminded me, because what you said about Mary, like my man Dave Hall from the Vernon, he did You Remind Me, They Reminisce, you know, Mary's album.
Right.
Dave was a cat in the Vernon who was running around chasing after cats like Hev and Eddie F trying to get on. You know, he's a little bit older than me, and I remember being in the whip with the cat on a New Year's Eve, going like down to 40 Deuce or whatever, and him talking about this shit, about how he got this different style. And Teddy Riley would get credit. If you was to ask like Hev, if you was to ask like Eddie F and them cats, like, who would you get a credit to? Teddy Riley would get most of the credit in terms of bringing that, like with Guy, with the group Guy, and that sound to R&B.
Right.
It was a lot of cats in the Vernon, because Hev was the first when he did Just Coolin' with Levert. He was like the first hip hop artist to work with a legitimate, established R&B group that we all the chicks love, and even the older generation before us fucked with Levert. And now you got Hev, who the older generation can relate to and we can relate to, and brought it together. But I'm just bugging because as John, as you talking about it, I'm thinking about like, damn, I can remember these cats being around Eddie and them talking about this new sound, the New Jack Swing, and then we gonna bring hip hop beats, like break beats, into R&B. And I'm looking about like, damn, that might be kind of ill and shit. And then to hear it, and then when I heard Mary's album, like, wow, okay, okay, I see what they doing. And Puff, was like you said, JP. He was a big part of that. So as much as someone like me may want to give him blame, you got to give him credit, man. He brought money into the game, man.
And keep in mind, this wasn't even like gonna be like, I'm not on no this puff or whatever like that.
No. I've said it a few times. I blame him.
I mean, he definitely, you know,
I gotta give him credit,
right? Especially as far as that R&B stuff, but on the hip hop side of things, it's just like I said, it was something about those 97, 98 years that changed the game. And what I was just saying about that Hard Knock Life album, that to me was like the breaking point, because it was the first time that a group of hip hop heads were like split down the middle. Like, you either love the album. There's not too many people I know who are like, yo, that album's cool. Either most people love it or they don't like it. It's really not. And I think that album kind of split it because Jay kind of figured out Big's formula. We talked about on the last show about how on the second album he was still trying to get the recipe right. He didn't have it. But by this album, you know, he had it. But to bring up one of the things that Ev said about, could you blame the rappers? Like, that's my next question. Because when we look at some things, and I sent out this article, and I don't know if Cats has seen it, but there was an Old Source magazine, and they were talking about, it was right, Midnight Marauders had just came out, and they were talking about how Q-Tip had to make a decision, either to move out of his mother's house in Queens or to cop a BMW 3 1/4. And he copped the 3 1/4, and he was still living in his mom's house in Queens, sleeping in his sister's twin bed. You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those things where you're talking about Tribe Called Quest, one of the biggest hip hop groups, Midnight Marauders just drops, and you can't even take a shorty back to the crib. You gotta get a telly because you got a twin bed still living at home with your moms. You know, keeping in mind, like, a lot of cats didn't notice. I was talking to my man the other day that Gangstar used to live with Branford Marcellus. Like, like in his family, like Branford Marcellus wasn't no bachelor. He's like, Gangstar's living with them. Now again, I don't know if that was out of money or whatever necessity. I don't know what that was, but I don't know too many hip hop artists who want to live with a jazz musician just because, you know what I mean? Or, you know, you figure until Big really got into the game, cats still used to talk about regular cars. You know what I mean? Like, keep in mind, you know, Buster, you know, on Sob Store, I got my Cherry Pathfinder. You know what I mean? Like, cats wasn't talking about 4.0s and Benzes and all that. I mean, back in the day, you was good with a Jetta. You know what I mean? Or with a Volvo. Like, it wasn't until those days that it really hit like that. So, like Ev had asked earlier, can we really blame these dudes? Can you blame a dude like Tip who is making this incredible music? I mean, John, you said, you know, Midnight is one of your favorite albums. Ev, you said it's your favorite album. You know, he's making this incredible music and still living at home with his mother. Like you said, Evan, you touched on it great that, yeah, when we were 20, it's like, it's for the culture, but as grown men, we're all married, kids, all that. Can we blame these MCs and these artists for, can we blame Tip for making a viral thing? Can we blame making a breather stop?
I mean, don't get me misunderstood. I do kind of blame them because it's still, you know, it affected the music. Now, it would have happened anyway, because that's just the nature and the history of music. Like, you know, musicians come, you get good stuff, and by the time what you're doing with that type of sound becomes popular, and everybody wants to make money off of it. And I think it's like that in all different forms of art. So I still blame them, but at the same point in time, I can't be mad at them because I'm not Q-Tip living in my mom's house, and I got two, maybe 3 albums out. And by this time, I should be more established as an individual, as a man, as a black man. So I can't necessarily knock him. I do kind of look at him like, I wish I didn't do that. But at the same point in time, who knows what any of us would have done in that same situation?
Right.
And again, we're talking about the nature of music. I just wish that, you know, in a perfect world, maybe cats didn't have to do that. Maybe we didn't have to be like the Joneses. Maybe we could have been more like, yo, you know what? I just want to get a crib, but I'm straight. I don't need to go double, triple platinum to be successful. And I know that's asking for a lot, but It just makes me wonder what would have happened to the music if we had more control of it. Because once you cross that line and you go into the pop market, then you lose your power. It's not your music. You can't call the shots no more. it don't belong to you no more. Now it belongs to whoever is in control of that pop market, and that's, you know, mainly white America. So then the music takes a turn, everything takes a turn, the style takes a turn, and then the culture itself.
Then the Viber thing comes out.
And then you on the album with fur. Let me stop. But anyway,
I enjoyed Vibrant Thing, by the way. I don't care. I love that song.
But yeah, so, I mean, I do blame them, but I'm not mad at them.
And keep in mind, I like Vibrant Thing too. I just think it wasn't what I was expecting from a
right. It was different.
But it was like
first time Tip delved into that realm of doing something right. Popish almost. It's like, wow, okay, Q-Tip, damn. But right. But I want to touch on something, Ed, what you were saying, and I think it's key. And you were saying they have to. Do they have to do this? And to answer that question, no, they don't. They don't. You do have a choice. You know what I mean? There's, you know, you can pull all the cliches out you want. You know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You know, all that type of shit. I think part of the problem is that at that time in hip hop, with the labels themselves, the labels just did not know how to properly market and sell hip hop, because back then it was still, because I know like now if you go up to a lot of these labels, it's especially the black music in terms of A&Rs and assistants and all that, yeah, it's predominantly black and Hispanic folks now doing black music. But back then it was majority still white folks, you know what I mean, who just did not, white men at that, who did not have a clue how to properly market and sell hip hop. So a cat like Q-Tip, and like y'all said, that, you know, I'm not gonna judge him until I'm in that position myself and have the same, you know, same kind of thing. And when like, what am I gonna do to properly say, well, he shouldn't have done that. That's that man's life, is his situation. I can't judge him until I'm in his shoes. But to answer the question, do we have to? No, we had choices. I mean, shit, I had a choice when contracts was in front of me and Sha to sign it and accept some of the terms we didn't like and just eat it, but we didn't like it. And we made the choice to be like, you know what, we good. I will go on. I believe in myself and my partner here that we'll find another way. But I'm not going to take that route, because you know what, that's the easiest route. And then 10 years from now, I'll be looking back like, damn, yo, how did I end up here? You know what I'm saying? It's because you made that choice, that one decision. You was at that crossroads, and that's part of what the game hangs on you. And unfortunately, tipping them either wasn't prepared for the situation in terms of how they was getting their money or whatever, who knows. But you do have a choice. And unfortunately, too many of these artists that we held dear to us, like same thing like them cats. Yo, Midnight Marauders is one of my favorite hip hop albums ever. One of the greatest albums ever to me, regardless of hip hop. But you had a choice. They had a choice to make, and this is the path they chose to take. So you got to eat with it. You got to eat with it. You got to take what comes along that road. You know what I'm saying? That's a choice you made. And you had another choice to fight it out and stick it out. And yo, you know what? Let's just tour. Let's do our own tour. Let's just get our paper, because I got to get out of my mom's crib, my nigga. I can't be staying in here in the twin bed bringing groupies home to this shit. But it is what it is, fam. You know, they did have a choice, and that's the choice they made.
Right. What you say, JP?
I mean, I agree. Like, I don't knock them for doing it. Like, I feel like it's just a progression. Like, you're still getting paid to do something that you love. Right. And we're also talking about cats who discover this craft, and they don't come from backgrounds where they already had money. So now you're doing what you love, and if you do it this way, you change this up, you can make even more money. Like, who wouldn't do that? Like, especially you young, you don't have that, you don't have the thought process of, like, you don't think of it as selling out until years later or whatever you want to call it. So you take that chance and you do what you want to do to get further. You know what I'm saying? So, and some people, they have no problem with it, and then years later, some people be like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have did that with what you did. So what? It's a learning process. So I feel like I'm not really the shift that we're talking about, the 98, 97, 98. Like, I'm not mad at it, because my terms of thinking, it was supposed to happen like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, what would have been staying the course to us? Like, what would have been like the albums that came out that we love in 93, 94, 95, and it would always stay the same through 98, 99, 2000. Like, that wouldn't have happened. You know what I'm saying? The cars that they made in 77 ain't the same cars they made in 87 or 97. Like, it's going to change. You got to expect that.
But I'm wondering, does the change have to come with, I guess, under the term of selling out? Because when we look at a lot of these other groups. I mean, when you think about some of the great hip hop that came out, let's say Running Them dropped in '84. From '84 to '96, that's a good 12-year run. You know what I'm saying? And you got a lot of dope albums that came out. To me, that don't sound the same. You're Gonna Get Yours doesn't sound like It Takes a Nation of a Millions, which doesn't sound like Fear of a Black Planet. And, you know, Strictly Business doesn't sound like Unfinished. I mean, what was the second album? Well, y'all know all the businesses. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, to me, Staying the Course could have been what happened from '84 to '96. You know, and nobody had any complaints. Nobody was like, yo, what? You know, when you went to a house party in '90, to throw on a party joint was throwing on Rebel Without a Pause. You know, like, it wasn't like we all enjoyed that music. Like, at Morgan, the parties that you guys threw, you know, before Big, we was dancing to Black Moon and Smith & Wesson and Helter Skelter and all that stuff. And nobody was complaining. Nobody was like, oh man, we need something more radio friendly to dance to. And to me, it stayed the course. For me, I don't blame them dudes, especially now that I'm older, you know, because it's just like, y'all did what y'all had to do. You know, I do wonder if you still enjoy making music that's not dear to your heart. You know, because your job is still as a musician, but would a jazz musician enjoy playing something that he doesn't feel? You know what I mean? But I personally don't blame them, especially now that I'm older, because like you said, Beezo, at that time, you know, Tip told you, you know, record companies are shady. You know, I'm sure this dude is sleeping in his mom's bedroom because of a jacked up, you know, contract that he signed when he was 18 years old and didn't know no better. You know what I mean? And I'm sure his mom's probably didn't know the business. And a lot of the artists I think that we talk about didn't have that, you know, had these messed up contracts. So I think the one thing that Puff did, it made more people aware of their contracts. I think it made people more business savvy. You know what I mean? Like, I forgot the name of the book by Donald Passman, but that book, you know, it's like all the things you need to know about the record industry. That book wasn't out in '91. You know, that book wasn't out when Gangstar got signed and EPMD got signed. They got signed to these 5-album deals, you know. But I just think, you know, it's just one of those things where it's just like, you got to do what you got to do. You know, now you could be like Gangstar and just stay the course, you know. And even when they made Royalty, at first I was like, you know, before I heard it, but when word got to air, like, yo, KC and JoJo doing a song with Gangstar, I was like, ugh. Yeah.
I never felt like that because I always looked at them.
No, but keep in mind that I'm at the radio station, so word is getting the air before I can hear the song. So if you just tell me Jodeci and Gangstar are doing a song, it's like, and then Gangstar and Total are doing a song, it's like, this could go left. And I mean, they walked that thin line, and I won't say that was a sellout move, but I'm just saying, you know, one time Google, Gangstar took out all the radio stations in Baltimore, and I asked the question, I was like, yo, I heard y'all doing a joint with Scarface, and I've never been a big Midwest dude fan of that music, and he was like, yo, I love Face, and we wanted to do a song together, you know, and I was like, wow, I guess that makes sense, like, you rock with this dude, you want to make a song with him, but I'm like, I just don't see Gangstar and Total hanging in the same circles. I don't see Gangstar and freaking KC and JoJo busting it up in D&D like that. So even
I agree with you on the first part, but KC and JoJo some wild cats. Word up. If there's any, I'm with you on the other shit, but if there's any R&B group that I could see being on some wild hip hop shit, it was them cats for sure.
Yeah, I guess. But keep in mind, this is the KC and JoJo to All My Life I've hoped to be with you. This ain't the Fiendin' KC and JoJo. This is the love ballad wet song.
But again, from what I know of cats from the Vernon that ran with them cats, them niggas was wild.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they did their thing. But just saying, even with that, because I remember there was a Source magazine, and it was Black Thought, Mos Def, and Foul March on the cover. And like, this mag was dedicated to like the underground, and you know, everybody's talking about why they don't sell out, and we don't do that, and we don't do this. And the thing is it's kind of like, I guess, like you said, I can't remember if Ab or Beezo, one of y'all said, like, finding another route to take. And when you look at it now, most of those other cats took the acting route. You know what I'm saying? So I guess to not have to sell out. You know, Thought tried to start acting, Common is an actor, Most was always an actor. But it seemed like, you know, Foul started doing ghostwriting for Nas, so it seemed like I think you were saying, Beezo, like there's another way that you could have found.
Time. Barrow was doing ghostwriting for Nas?
I mean, no, I'm sorry, I meant for Puff. My bad.
Oh. I'm about to say, oh, whoa. Like, how did I not hear this before? What's going on?
My bad. Go try it.
Still my heart, son. That was
Disrespect. I ain't starting no dead president rumors, no J Electronica stuff. Yeah, but so it seemed like you said, Beezo, they found another route to make money, and I guess, like you would say, stay making the music that, you know, that.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask y'all this then, because something what you just said, Kill, made me think. Go back to what Ed was saying. Like, if they had a choice, and maybe it's the chicken, which came first, chicken or the egg shit. But if you do feel as though somebody deserves blame, if you're on that side of the fence that somebody deserves blame for where this shit went, who deserves more blame then? Puff for being the business cat and understanding, and like I think John, you said it about how he took the dopest MC in the game at the time with Big and knew, I'm going to build that cat up because he's this nice and he's going to let me do this other business shit that I want to do with a dope MC. But is Puff to blame, or are the artists who tried to copycat his methods, are they more to blame than Puff? Because think about it, if I'm sitting here, we on this podcast, and I say some dumb shit, but it's my shit that I started, and y'all follow me on it. Like you just said that mistakenly about Nas and Pharoah Monch, and let's just say I just ran with it. You know, who am I more to blame, or are you more to blame? In some ways, I'm more to blame because I took this shit what you said and just started going around telling the world. You just told me some shit, and now I'm going to take it and run around the world with it and start this bullshit rumor. So is Puff to blame, or is it the cats that tried to follow everything he did to blame?
Because he's the first one to do it and it be a success, most people would say he's to blame. Because if he just did it and, you know, sample the popular records and have people rhyme over it just straight loops and it didn't work, nobody would follow that. Exactly. But because it was a success, everybody jumps on. That happens in all types of industries. You know what I'm saying? So
who are we to blame then? I mean, is it fair to put the blame, again, this is all if you're on that side of the fence of assigning blame as opposed to credit. So then who deserves, because obviously Puffy deserves credit, no doubt. There's no question about that. But if you want to assign blame, does it really go to Puff, or should it go to the cats who followed him?
I think it goes
all that talk about being this, that, and the third, and then you won't follow this cat.
I think it goes to a little bit of both. I mean, for me, I remember during those times with Puff, I hated Puff. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, it was like, yo, come on, man. You know what I mean? But at the same token, I still put blame on the people who are following it because, you know, it's one of those things that it's like, yo, come on, like, you don't have to do everything that they're doing. And like I said, we started off with Big saying, took home, rated dollars and study shit. You know what I mean? So it's like cats, literally, one of the things that was one of the rules of hip hop is no biting. You know, maybe that's where the whole no biting thing went out the window. Like, there's been a lot of hip hop rules that were built like pillars of hip hop that were destroyed. So maybe
they were destroyed during that era. They were destroyed during that era.
So maybe that's a great point, that's where no biting went out the window and that pillar just fell down, because there's so much stuff that happens in hip hop now that couldn't have happened in the 90s. If you got a picture of Eric B kissing Rakim, it's a wrap. They're done, both of them. You know, now you got Lil Wayne kissing Baby, and it's like, oh man, come on, a father can't kiss his son. It's like, yo, work, this nigga ain't his son. Like, yo, like that would coming up with excuses. Like, you know, you couldn't have done that in the 90s. I don't care how nice you were. You know, you can't say I was a CEO, but I wasn't a CEO. All right, y'all called me. I ain't a CEO, but I'm still a boss. Like, so maybe that's where those rules, maybe that's where those pillars of hip hop started to crumble, because it was okay. Well, yeah, we just gonna bite it. We're gonna bite everything that they're doing and run to the bank with it.
Yeah. Yo, let me ask y'all. This is somewhat off the subject. I'm sorry to take it here, but because you just brought it up about Baby and Homeboy. This cat, Young something, I don't know, Young Thug, Young whatever.
Young Thug
said, now the whole thing about Ferguson and how he said it's not an artist. I sent it. I put it on Facebook.
I saw it.
To speak on those types of things. That's a whole episode, a whole show right there. But that nigga said he was questioned. Him and his boys called each other their lovers, my husband, This is like, I'm talking about y'all three like, yo, Kill is my husband. That's how these niggas is talking, son. Now, what part of the game, like, Kill, you like to say, what part of the game is that, my nigga? Come on.
Yo, B, I don't know what part of the game that is, but that's what the game has become. You know, the pillars of what was built for hip hop, you know, no biting, you know, being original, doing your own thing. I think once that money came into it, all the rules went out the window. You know what I mean? And I think one of my homegirls always says it. She was like, you know, you got a lot of people, you open up Pandora's box, you can't close it. And I think that's what happened. They opened up Pandora's box, let all this money in, like the Mad Rapper skits, y'all got mermaids in the fucking videos, y'all got Benzes, and once people saw that, it was like, yo, I'm off to the races. And not for that, I had done some research on the boy Hype Williams. I never realized Hype had such a huge background in hip hop. Like, this dude was doing the grimy videos. This dude was doing like Black Moon and all them videos. And he used to be doing like 30 plus videos a year pre-97. Post 97, he dropped to about 13, and those 13 were only the cream of the crop artists of that time. Because again, that was when the whole video, your budget was like $1 million to shoot a video. You know what I mean? So much change. You know, you could say, you know, did Hype Williams sell out? Like, this dude came up with Black Moon and these underground groups. Now, I don't touch that. If you ain't Puff or Big or Jay or, you know, Mary or Usher, I don't even rock with you. But again, it's that money, you know, because you getting that percentage off that $1 million to shoot that video versus what you getting from Black Moon and them dudes. You know what I mean? But I guess with all that being said, what do you think? And I know we always talk about this to some extent, but since that line was drawn in the sand of hip hop, you know, sell out, all those things, do you see it being a place where is there a middle ground? Is there a way to now in 2014 with all the mediums we have, Twitter, you know, Bandcamp, iTunes, all that, do you all see a feasible way that you can make the music you want to make, whatever that is, because I have people who tell me Outkast sold out with stuff like Bombs Over Baghdad, and I beg to differ because I'm like, Outkast never bit another style. Like, to me, they never was like, oh, let's do what they want to do. They just kept doing what they wanted to do. They kind of made you follow them. They didn't follow nobody else. And I always say it, Outkast is one of the few groups to sell so many records without having an A-list producer on. You know, Jay's always had a Pharrell or a Timbaland or somebody in his back pocket. And most people who sell units have that, and Cass didn't. But do you all think that there is a feasible way for artists to make the kind of music that they want to make in 2014 and still be able to, and I guess as you kind of touched on it, live more than comfortably? You know, what do you think, Jay?
Yeah, it's definitely, you can definitely do that. More than comfortably, I think that varies to each person. Like, what do you consider comfortable or more than comfortable? What I consider success, you may not consider success. So I mean, it's a perspective thing, but you can definitely make the type of music you want. Have a fan base, not even have radio play, because there are so many groups and individual artists that we never hear on the radio that tour constantly, put out music on a regular basis, and get to live off of what they, you know what I'm saying, live off of their craft. You know what I'm saying? So you can absolutely do it.
Right. I know you're a big foreign exchange and fine.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Right. All right, what you say, Ev?
I think it's definitely possible. I think I kind of want to connect this to another point we were talking about earlier, as far as when that split happened, and the split itself, you know, being a good thing, maybe being a bad thing. I just think it's interesting now that what we look at now, what we're getting now, as far as what's being put onto a pedestal, is things pre 96, 97. We got the Illmatic thing, we got the Tribe documentary, we got Wu-Tang selling you know, putting an album out for $1 million. I think, you know, things like that definitely help bring a certain type of consciousness back to the music itself. I think so. I mean, I'm glad these things are happening. So I think if it does happen, it's because of what's going on right now. But I think now it's you know, it's a different time. I think, you know, I think because of social media, you can really have a nice following, and long as people come to your shows, you can have, you know, you can have a hell of a life. I know there's a cat by the name of actually he's a friend of a buddy of mine. It's a cat from Cleveland, I think, named Blitz the Ambassador. And this cat does well. He has a nice following. He may not be, on the pop charts, nothing like that, but he does well to sustain himself and to have a family and to live comfortably and things like that. So I think as long as because record sales nowadays mean nothing. Nobody makes money off of record sales at all. So if you're able to do it and maybe contain, hold on to your rights and hold on to your royalties and things like that, and be able to travel and have a following fan base that will come to your shows and buy tickets to your shows and pay for your whatever paraphernalia you bring. Like I think it's dope. I think you can definitely do it at this point in time. You may not be Puffy. You may not be Jay-Z or something like that.
Did he freeze on y'all end too?
Yeah.
I froze up.
Now you good? You good?
Good now.
Good.
Oh,
Like Jay.
I'm saying as long as you have a crowd behind you, you can definitely do it and make it happen.
What you think, babe?
Yeah, I think you can. I think what Ev just said is the biggest fact, or one of the biggest factors, that record sales nowadays. You got a handful of cats that are selling records. You know what I mean? Nicki Minaj and the one to call Iggy Azalea, hip hop artists. You don't have a lot of people selling records anyway. You know what I mean? So where a lot of these cats have realized the money is in the shows. You know what I mean? So you got cats like Raekwon and Ghost and Wu-Tang, people that are still, they're from that era that people like us love, and they're still viable. They're still viable artists, and now people coming up behind them. And I think one thing that maybe is going unnoticed, and this conversation I had the other day with my mans, is like, back in the 80s when Kane was Kane and Rakim was Rakim and all that, you started seeing like EPMD had, artists would have like one dance song. One song is for the club, one song for the chicks, and the rest of them songs was like, official hip-hop, hardcore hip-hop shit. And now I think what you're seeing is these cats are doing that, whatever that style is, you want to call it turned up, whatever. But now, especially East Coast artists, are now starting to feature at least one, and I hate using this term, man, that boom bap style of hip hop. It is starting to make a comeback, and I think between like the internet and you got fans, man, in New Zealand, Australia, the Far East, Africa, that didn't exist for Q-Tip. You know what I'm saying? Back when he was sleeping on his mom's in his crib and on a twin bed in his sister's room, whatever. That entity just wasn't there for hip hop, but now it is there. And I think there is a good chance, and I think it is happening as we speak. And I think if it keeps going the way it's going, that I think you will see by this time next year where there is a definite market for that style of hip hop. And like JP and Ev both said, that it's going to come down to what you consider success or what you consider making it now. You know what I mean? You want to be Puff and them, or you want to be the cat that's you living nice, you got a good life off of making music. And I think it comes down to who you are as an individual, what choice. You do have that choice now. There is no excuses. Which one do you want? And you just got to go ahead and do it now. See, I think it's very possible.
Yeah, the funny thing was, I was talking to Ski the other night. We was talking about Bleak. And he's one of the people to me who I thought Bleak was a dope MC, but he was an underground MC. And I felt like Rockefeller for years always was trying to make him the next Jay-Z, trying to make him do a party song, or whatever like that. I mean, the joint, my favorite song off that Hard Knock Life album is the joint with the Bleak that sets it off over the Primo beat. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like there are all those artists that are like Bleak that, whether the label or whoever, even the joint that Roots did for Bleak, with the Jay-Z, but My Ladies Run This, it's like, to me, that's not Bleak's lane. You know what I'm saying? And I think the great thing about it now is that because of the internet, because of all these things, rappers understand their lane. Freeway is one. He's one who understands his lane. My lane is underground hip hop. Same thing happened with Beans. Before this drama with Beans, Beans had an album like that he tried to put out independently with R. Kelly. And I'm like, dog, why are you doing songs with R. Kelly? Like, that's not your lane. Your lane is hip hop dudes. Free stuck to his lane. Free has had a steady mixtape album steadily been grinding. I mean, when Free first came out, I didn't even like Free. Free is like one of my favorite MCs now. You know why? Because he understood his lane and he stayed there. But let me ask y'all this last question, because from all these conversations, it kind of came up. I'm one of the few people who, since Amplified, hasn't really been checking for Tip like that. You know, I know a lot of people. My man Jay swears by the last Tip album he put out. I keep hearing about Tip doing his last Zulu album. I'm like, in no way excited. There's no anticipation. There's nothing behind it. And I wonder, is that because he gave us Amplify? Because I like Breathe and Stop. I like Vibrant Thing. I like the joint Let's Ride that, you know, I know Dilla did a lot of it, but a lot of the album I wasn't feeling. Like, John, I know you're a Tip fan. I mean, we all are. But are y'all checking for Tip now for this new album? And if not, why not?
I mean, I liked his last album. It was okay. I expected more, but there were some joints on there that I liked. For this, you know, the last Zulu album that's, you know, coming out whenever. I mean, I'm hoping. You know, I'm like, come on, Tip, come on, baby. You know, but I mean, it's like.
But here's the thing. What are you hoping for?
I'm hoping for a blend of everything. You know what I'm saying? Like some nostalgic stuff, yeah. But you can still make stuff that's, you know, quote unquote current. Because to me, good music is good music. That's a whole other thing that I hate when people be like, "Oh, that sounds dated." What does that even mean? Like, if it sounds good, it sounds good. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it, like I like stuff from the '70s, I still sound hot today. So dated doesn't mean nothing, because there was whack songs in the '70s that I didn't like either. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, but Tip, like I'm hoping for a blend of everything. I feel like he's talented enough to make that type of album, to blend everything together. I mean, the joint that he did with Busta, the mixtape, there was a couple of joints on there that I really liked, that I was like, oh, okay. Like, it was some stuff like, oh, okay, yeah, he still got it. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, we'll see. I'm always going to check for it, just because he made such music that touched me, that stayed with me to this day. It's always going to be something for him that I'm going to look forward to. I'm never going to write him off completely.
Right, and again, I'm not saying write him off. I mean, you throw a new Q-Tip at me today, I'm going to definitely listen to it, but there's no anticipation. There's no like, oh man, I can't, come on, Tip. When you coming, come on, bro. Like how y'all have for Jay Electronica, there is like, come on, Tip, where's it coming? Where's it coming? On Jay Electronica, Tip, real quick, I don't know if y'all saw that tweet he sent out on Instagram with him, no ID, and Jay in a hotel working on some stuff. So, okay, coming. But what do you say about Tip? Are you looking forward to this album? Because I'm wondering, is it because of the path he took that I'm not looking forward to the album? So are you looking forward to it? And the same thing, if not, why not?
I am actually. I got one more check in for Tip. Because Tip is an artist, and you know, and he goes out and he comes back and he goes out, and like Jay said, the joint he did with Busta, it had some joints on it. It had a couple joints on it. Maybe want to check to see what Tip is going to do. And I mean, I have to give the Tip too, because when we talk about these, you know, quote unquote golden eras, Tip had a lot to do with. He had hands, not a lot, but he had hands in a lot of that dope stuff that we consider classic material now, not just Tribe shit. Like, you know,
One Love,
Nas, you know, he had all. Yeah. So exactly. So because of that, you know, his artistry alone makes me still want to check for him. Like I'm gonna check in for him. Like if he's releasing something, I'll check for it for sure, because it's Tip.
All right. What about you, Big?
I mean, I'm just going to add on to what Ev and JP just said. I mean, for me, the Abstract and the Dragon, that joint almost like woke me back up. But I still, if it's Q-Tip, I'm going to check for it. So I think Kill, you was the one that first told me about it. And when I finally listened to it, I had gone for so long not buying, like I didn't buy the album, what is it, Amplified?
Yeah.
And then the other one, is that the one that he's holding the MP on the cover?
Nah, I forgot the name of that.
That was his last album.
Yeah, like I didn't purchase either one of them albums. So when I listened to the Abstract and the Dragon, there were songs on there that I found out later. Oh, that's all for seconds. I'm like, damn, I never heard this joint before because I didn't buy them albums. But like Ev just said, when I heard that joint, that was like, okay, that was like a reminder, like, hey man, and Q-Tip even said it on one of them skits, like, yo, I'm not gonna sit in the corner like, oh, I can't do that. Yo, that nigga's an artist. You know what I mean? So if Q-Tip has something coming out that I hear about, I am by osmosis almost, and my hip hopness going to seek it out and listen to it. And like we talked about, and you said the same thing too, Kill, how I've kind of taken the attitude over the years of if it's dope hip hop, it'll find its way back to me just because it's in my hip hop is a part of my DNA. So eventually to get back to me. But Q-Tip is like one of those exceptions to that rule for me, that if I get wind that yo Tip got some joints coming out, I am going to look for it because I trust in his artistry. I trust in his hip hopness that he's going to make. If it's 13 cuts, I know I'm going to get 2 or 3 at least that I'm going to be able to listen to and ride to and vibe to and love. And even if the rest of the album is garbage, it's straight trash, I trust in Tip that he's going to give me 2 or 3 that I can hold on to dearly and love them joints. That's because he's just that dude for me. Because like Ev just said, I mean, I think so many people miss out on how much Tip impacted and affected that golden era of hip hop, yo. People don't realize. I mean, the stories, man. Mobb Deep, you know, that he was the one that got Have to bring out that sound that we love, that classic Mobb Deep sound. That was Q-Tip.
The whole time, are we falling in? I don't want to belabor this because I mean, my thing is Tip is an artist, but the last couple albums I ain't feeling, and like that's where we differ because 3 songs ain't good enough for me. If you got 13 songs,
you're not gonna listen to them 3 songs because the other 10 are not good.
Wait. Let me say this. We about to go back into another session that we had before. This is on Fan. We've already covered this.
You're right. Thank you for breaking it up. Thank you for breaking it up. You're right. So, on that note, let me just say one more fact because, Beezo, you made a point. Well, all 3 of y'all made a point that it's really hard to place the blame of something else. But something else that I peeped in 98 was when we got a whole influx of that whole No Limit sound. You know what I mean? Like, when I'm just looking at the list, you had 400 Degrees, Juvenile, you had the Big Timers, Yuck Mouth, Fiend, Soulja Slim, Young Blood, Young Bleed, C Murder. So I think, Beezo, what you were saying about like that perfect storm, like you got Puff, then you got Master P coming up, and you got the West Coast. So, you know, just to throw that in there too, that I think that was another thing that, you know, contributed to that. So another dope show, y'all. As always, check us out, youtube.com/live from the bench. Leave us some comments. Hit us up at Twitter at the Live Writers. Y'all, appreciate another dope show. Ev, appreciate you being a referee to keep that from going where it was about to go.
Another hour.
Yeah, another hour was just about to happen, all about Q-Tip. All right, y'all. Keep it live from the Writers Bench. Next show, keep it live.
Peace.